Blimey. Ooh, this is one out of a jam jar you got here.
Warning. The House of Mystery contains demons, angels, elementals, magicians, wizards, apparitions, adult language, and discussions. If you're easily offended, do not enter the House of Mystery.
All right, then. On with the show.
Well, here I'm hanging from a tree, and the clouds will eat my oats. But I couldn't help myself, I started to help. So speak no evil, I shut the Lord on with my gun.
All right, hello, welcome everyone to the House of Mystery, the John Constantine and Friends podcast. I don't know what's happening lately. I'm forgetting the name of
the House
show.
of Mystery.
The House of Mystery. We're traveling through oblivion at breakneck speeds, Dave. Are you ready for this?
Oh, yeah. Ready and waiting.
Let's dodge the dead bodies. I'm sorry for killing people. But listen, it happens once you enter the House of Mystery. It makes you go mad and crazy. All right, so you and I today are here to discuss Tom Taylor's DCeased sequel, DCeased Dead Planet. You might ask, why? It's not part of the regular content you guys cover. It's not magical. And it's not. It's not necessarily magical or overly magical. And it's not connected to the occult as most of the other content we cover. But it is appropriate content for this show because John Constantine has a part to play in the sequel series, as does Zatanna and Swamp Thing. So I feel like it's very much appropriate, right?
Oh, absolutely. Especially since if you've been reading the whole series of DCeased, Hope at World's End with John was awesome.
Yeah. Good stuff.
It was good.
Now, we're not going to spend a lot of time on all the different characters because this is the House of Mystery. For the purpose of this discussion, we are going to be focusing most of our discussion points on John and the story as it pertains to him.
Yes.
And once Zatanna and Swamp Thing make their appearances, we will also focus on the two of them. And we're going to do this continually throughout the run of DCeased Dead Planet. We will be covering each issue. Now, I'm not sure if we will continue to cover each individual issue. We may skip a month and then catch up by doing issues 2, 3, 4 together. We'll see. It depends on scheduling and what the world of John Constantine looks like. Because as I said during our last broadcast, the year of John Constantine seems to be 2020. There's just so much content coming out pertaining to him.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a good thing. I'm not complaining, but we have to pick and choose and figure out what we're going to cover and what will be more worth covering when it comes to our listeners. What do they want to listen to us talk about? What do I want to talk about? More importantly, Dave, I don't want to be bored behind the microphone. I want to enjoy myself.
Yeah.
In fact, I might.
You don't want to even be angry. Don't be angry.
I don't want to be angry. In fact, I might end up reviewing some Zatanna fan fiction. You know? Don't judge me. Maybe some Zatanna /fiction where she has a relationship with Swamp Thing.
Oh, and there's a lot of green tentacles going on.
John Constantine is cuckold in the back.
Because that's pretty much his destiny right there.
Listen, that I just wrote something and that's pretty steamy.
Oh, someone right now is obviously writing it.
Yeah, they're just like, whoa, this is fucking good stuff. I'm going to write this down. Give me a second here.
Constantine watches.
Constantine, fade in. Constantine is crying cuckold in the corner.
Cuckold in the
While
corner.
Swamp Thing roots himself inside of Zatanna. You're a sicko, Dave. Why would you come up with disgusting filth like that? You should be ashamed of yourself.
Hey, it's just part of the human race. We're just...
Yeah. So I'm super stoked to see. Not, am I super soaked? Maybe after
hearing that.
I can't think straight. No, I'm super stoked to see how all of this is going to turn out. This is a big story. This is the summer blockbuster film of comic events. It's very high concept. Zombies, superheroes, explosions, fast cars, hot women, hot dudes. I mean, DCeased was the best-selling DC comic title in May of 2019. One of the all-time top-selling comics in history. I know that's saying a lot. There's a lot of comics out there, but if you look at the charts, it was, I believe we covered it during an episode of Comic Book Chaos for our Patreon subscribers, right?
Yeah.
And at that time, when we covered it, wasn't it the top-selling comic book period at that time?
Oh,
The first
absolutely.
one?
Yeah, the first series was super popular when it came out, and
Yeah.
it there was like
Don't
zero
quote me on that, listeners, but I'm pretty sure it was record-breaking.
Yeah, there was zero expectations of it, and then when everyone took the chance or a chance and time to actually read the story, they realized that Tom Taylor is one of the best writers out there, especially in regards to his work with franchises within DC that don't have to deal with the main universe.
He's definitely high concept. Like, he definitely has a knack for the big,
almost
big
like
events.
Elseworlds. Almost like
Yeah.
Elseworld titles, because like his
He's
work
like a Michael Bay meshed with Steven Spielberg meshed with James Cameron. Like, he's the
Yeah.
comic version of that. Just very big, high concept explosions and excitement.
and like his work in Injustice.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's the reason
exactly.
why he's the reason why Injustice, the comic book series, went on for like, I think they're up to 3 or 4 seasons,
Yeah.
and people have actually stated up to this point Injustice is actually more popular than the actual video game it's based on. and like when people saw DCeased, they immediately just threw it in the bin, because they were like going, oh, it's zombies all over again.
Zombies.
And oh, Marvel did this, so DC's copying it. But when you actually give it time and
I gotta say,
actually
DC did it better.
Yeah, Tom Taylor did a fantastic job.
Especially with those goddamn variants, those variant covers that make all of us just go broke.
Yeah, especially since, as funny as it sounds that you bring up the fact that Tom Taylor's like a blockbuster movie director type, all the popular variants of DC
Based on films, yeah.
based on films.
Yep.
This particular one is my favorite by far, because it's based on one of my favorite films of all time, Blade Runner. And it is a gorgeous cover. But that's not to say like the original covers from the very first series weren't amazing either. It's amazing the homages they played to it. And just like we said, Tom Taylor just has a knack of taking a very high concept and coming out with a really good narrative.
Yeah,
That's
it's
not
exciting.
Just
It's
not
exciting.
explosions.
I mean, this isn't, Books of Magic level
No.
writing.
No.
It's good.
It's good.
It's fun. Here's the sales. DC was the best-selling DC Comics title in May 2019, with comic book stores ordering 3 times as many copies as they did of Batman and over twice as many copies as Doomsday Clock.
Yep.
Not to mention the trade paperbacks now as well. The collected versions of those things. I believe there's different versions you could get. A routinely strong performer, the first issue was released in May 2019 and was ranked number 1 in comic book sales for that period. So I was right. Issue 2 sold strongly, coming in at number 2. Issue 3 dipped a bit, selling 132,000 copies. That's a lot of fucking comic books in this day and age.
Yeah.
With a further decrease in August for issue 4, and it went down to 120,000 copies. I mean, that's still good.
That's still really good. And honestly, at that point, a lot of people, by issue number 2, a lot of people that I know that are huge fans of the series basically said they started pulling back on buying the series itself, because they were going to wait till the trade paperback
That's what a
to
lot of people
see
do.
the complete story, because that's how good it was.
Yeah.
And a lot of the sales that you're seeing in there are from the variants.
Yep.
They're from the variant sales, where basically
we were raped.
Yeah, the really hardcore
But can you
fans
rape
like
the
me and
willing
you,
though? Can you rape the willing? Because we were like we gladly dropped down and grabbed our ankles and said, "Yes, please sell me 7 of the same issue, please. Thank you, sir."
And thank you for making it beautiful and gallery worthy.
I'm not gonna say it wasn't a good raping because maybe we should ixnay on the raping word. It was a good fucking. Because those variant covers were fucking top notch, and it doesn't.
It was a substantial lovemaking.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So this is what Tom Taylor does best.
Yes.
Typically, this big stuff is not my cup of tea when it comes to comics. I do enjoy it, but I'm more drawn to the smaller scale stories, more detailed books like the classic Hellblazer.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Tom Taylor is very good at what he does. It's his brand that he's managed to, monetize. He's doing a great job. And after his work on the DCeased one-shot, A Good Day to Die, I liked his take on Constantine. And this is why we are continuing to cover his work for the time being, as long as he's continuing to dip his toes in the John Constantine water. In just a single one-shot, you and I gushed over it. I mean, he displayed his comprehension of the character in a way that a lot of writers don't get. I mean, we had an entire Rebirth run, and maybe out of 24, I believe there's 24 issues in Rebirth,
Yes.
maybe 2 or 3 issues really captured Constantine, in my opinion. Whereas here, in the DCeased one-shot, A Good Day to Die, he manages in a few pages to really show the reader that he does understand Constantine.
Yeah.
Obviously, the folks over at DC have complete faith in his ability to push forward the Constantine mythos because he's also been hired on to do a miniseries, Hellblazer Rise and Fall, starting,
Yep.
I believe, in September. So,
And so many people, so many fans are really anticipating that because while we have the big writers like Capullo and Snyder working
Right.
on like the main events,
yeah.
there's been actually a call to see it. Why can't Tom Taylor actually take a main event comic book
Would
series?
you call this a main event, though? I mean, this is an entire
main
thing.
event when it comes to the actual DC,
Like the main
main
continuity.
universe.
Yeah.
Everyone's
The
like
main
going,
universe,
yeah,
yeah.
the main universe. They should let Tom Taylor take a huge title.
We'll
And I
see
have
what
to
he-
agree.
we'll
After
see.
everything he's done in DCeased and then in Justice, I'm like going, why aren't they giving Tom more
Yeah.
work?
Well, okay. I'll be honest with you. I'm not an avid fan of Tom Taylor. I'm not. I feel like he does great work with what he's given and
Yes.
what he does. But I will say I'm slowly becoming a fan because of John Constantine.
Yes.
For me, it all comes down to John Constantine. He's really the only reason why I started even paying attention to Tom Taylor. And I've slowly realized that the guy is a very capable writer. And as I said, the way the one shot ended, there were big allusions to some grand part that John had to play with the future of mankind in the DCeased timeline or DCeased universe, DCeased continuity. And of
Yeah.
course, he doesn't have to worry about the intricacies of the main continuity with this series. And we can just have fun.
Absolutely.
But just because you're having fun doesn't mean you don't want to stay true to the characterizations of our heroes. And that's something that Taylor has yet again in this issue managed to show that he has an understanding and a respect for.
And that just makes the upcoming series that he's going to do for Hellblazer really, really intriguing.
Well,
it's
Dave,
kind of like I'm so excited for it, but also
I'm excited.
you,
I'm hesitant.
I'm hesitant because I'm like going, okay, when is Tom Taylor going to drop the ball? Because everyone does it.
Well, I feel like this issue is going to weigh a lot of pros and cons
Yes.
as we discuss Constantine's aspect in the first issue of DCeased Dead Planet. There's an argument to be made that he may do a fine job.
Oh yeah.
And honestly, his run on Hellblazer Rise and Fall, that miniseries there will honestly be the deciding factor for me, whether or not I will call myself a fan of Tom Taylor. If he delivers a Hellblazer story that's worthy of John Constantine, then then he has just earned himself another fan.
Avid
Because-
follower.
Because I wouldn't call myself a fan as of yet. I enjoy his work, but I'm not going out buying everything he does.
Yes.
Like I do with Cy Spurrier.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Now, this story takes place in an alternative Earth where a corrupted version of the anti-life equation has infected most of Earth's inhabitants with a zombie-like virus. Lois Lane acts as the series narrator, detailing how the events took place over the course of a few weeks. And this, of course, is the setup of DCeased as a whole. And it's fun. The layout that they put down as the foundation allows you to take some risks and explore the unexplored. Because this is an alternative Earth, again, not having to worry about the main continuity, you can have some fun. And that's where Tom Taylor has really found his niche, in these storylines that don't require adherence to continuity. And it's given him a leg up, in the world of comic books with fans, because a lot of fans can just crack open a comic and not worry about the baggage that continuity brings.
Yeah.
You can just open up a comic book and be swept up into the story immediately, and not worrying that you don't quite understand where everyone fits in. If you know the basics of Superman, you know the basics of Batman, you know the basics of whatever character you're drawn to, you can enjoy the story. And he did the same thing in Dead Planet #1, taking those risks. Now, the synopsis for Dead Planet #1, set 5 years after the original miniseries, Dead Planet follows the new Justice League as they return to an Earth now overrun with the anti-living in search of Cyborg, who's just ahead, by the way. I laughed out loud.
Oh yeah,
I
did
lulled
too.
a few times.
Especially when you get to that point, you realize that Cyborg's still alive.
Hey, dude, I've never liked Cyborg, and when we saw Wonder Woman rip his head off, I just laughed.
You were clapping, weren't you?
A little bit. And then when his head is in the ground for like 5 years, I'm just like, you suck.
You suck.
So, in search of Cyborg, who managed to activate a distress beacon in his head, secretly installed by Batman, to transmit a message in Morse code. As a group of heroes return to Earth to respond to the signal, they are attacked by Wonder Woman, who kills Green Arrow before Jonathan can talk with Cyborg and confirm that there is a cure for the infection. All right, so things start in the Oblivion Bar.
Where that says it all. Is like, think about the synopsis. We're supposed to follow the new Justice League, right?
You're right.
But you start in the Oblivion Bar with Constantine.
Well, it's a good balance of optimism and just sheer pessimistic depression.
Yes. Oh my God, dude! And where you find him, and I'm like, yeah, this is what I expect out of Constantine.
Yeah, right. Things start in the Oblivion Bar. John Constantine is doing what, honestly, John Constantine does best: brooding and drinking alone.
Yeah, and think about that, dude. The last time we saw John Constantine in this universe, he basically made the statement, no, I am staying here on this planet, and he refused to leave with Dr. Fate and Zatanna.
Did it? No, I think he ended up going with him.
No, he decided to stay. Because
Are you talking about another issue?
Yeah, and another issue.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, okay.
He decided to stay on the planet to try to figure something out. And I'm like, yeah, this is where I expect John in 5 years. What is he going to do? He's going to be brooding all the time because that's not his MO.
Yeah, it was good seeing him in the Oblivion Bar. That alone, for me, made the $4.99 purchase worth it for me. I was like, you earned my money. Thank you for having an intro like that. That's so fitting of John Constantine. As I said, I'm very critical and nitpicky when it comes to new writers tackling John Constantine. Many people think they have a clue. Like, I can do this, but they don't. I strongly believe, Dave, and this might be a little over the top, but I strongly believe that it takes a truly empathic writer to deliver the goods when it comes to a character like this.
Yes.
There's so much baggage that makes up the mythos of John, and you have to understand his past and the decisions he's made to form a decent story for this character.
Yeah.
And if you can't get in the mind of a character like this, then you'll never do a John Constantine story just. And the way it was introduced, the way John Constantine was introduced in the opening pages of Dead Planet #1, I was very happy with Taylor's work.
Yeah.
Because 90% of John Constantine, or I should say 90% of a John Constantine story is internal.
Yes.
And I will say, we don't have enough from Taylor yet to say he's nailed it quite yet, but I like what I've seen so far. Just looking at the one shot, making him the last man on Earth, the
Yes.
last hope.
Last hope.
Listen, the last thing John wants to be is the last man on Earth, right? Or anyone's hope.
Exactly.
Call it a form of self-loathing, a responsibility he doesn't want because of the way he values himself or lack of. I mean, I can do an entire thesis on the
that
why.
character, yeah.
On the why he does not want to be the last hope or the last man on Earth.
Because and also he's so self-defeating. And that's one of the core elements of Constantine is kind of like essentially it was like 2 pages of John Constantine to establish the beginning of this story. And in 2 pages, Taylor's able to actually get his characteristic down, and we as Constantine fans are like going, yeah, this is what we expected John to do in 5 years.
Yeah.
Just to brood and like, but I don't know
5
about
years,
you.
and he's just in the Oblivion bar drinking.
I don't know about you, but also Tom Taylor was, for me, at the end of that, you kind of get this sense of foreboding that John does have a plan, because when he tells, "Oh, don't worry, Z, I'm never alone," and suddenly you see ghosts
Yeah,
of
I
the
don't
other
know.
of the people that died in that one shot,
Yeah,
and I'm like going, "What did John do?"
I don't know if that was just more of like, I think it's a way to contextualize the subtext of what, I don't.
That's the beautiful part about that scene is
Yeah.
like you can interpret it any way you want,
Right.
But it gives you this sense of tension that John's going to do something,
Right, however
however you panhandle, how you look at and interpret that scene,
right.
John,
Exactly.
you still get the sense of
The point is clear.
dread,
Yeah, yeah.
especially when it comes to Constantine. You get the sense of dread, like it's like, oh no, what is John going to do, or what did he do within 5 years? Because that's when it dawned on me as a writer or as a reader. Okay, 5 years have passed, and John, last time we saw, decided to stay on Earth because he didn't want to leave with Dr. Fate and Zatanna for some strange reason, because he didn't want to give up hope.
He likes to wallow.
He wants to
likes
wallow.
be in it. I mean, that's what we saw.
Yeah.
And when we take a look at what Taylor did in these opening pages, establishing a bit of his own mythos for John. Let's go back to, for a second, the DCeased one-shot. Establishing a bit of his own mythos for John, putting him in a scenario where he had to kill his best friend, Chaz.
Yes.
And in this issue, he's drinking at the Oblivion bar with the ashes
Ashes
of Chaz.
of Chaz. And I'm like going, Chaz is pissed. Poor Chaz.
Poor Chaz, poor Constantine. Chaz is dead. I mean, that just shows you the mindset of Constantine. Talk about a defeated mentality of just morbid proportions. It's all a reflection of how he sees himself. He blames himself, even though he's not the cause of any of what's really going on. But just listening to this conundrum going, no, backtrack. Just listen to this conundrum going on in his head. He's got survivor's guilt for surviving because he's not the kind of guy that would sacrifice himself. And because of that, he survived.
Exactly.
I mean, how convoluted is that? And yet it makes perfect sense when it comes to Constantine. And those moments, the fact that he hates himself for it, and he's so at conflict with himself, it's fucking perfect. And this is why I am slowly becoming a fan of Taylor.
Yeah.
And as I said at the top of the show, there'll be pros and cons. We're going to weigh what's good about Constantine. What does Taylor do that's great with Constantine? What can we use as a piece of evidence to show that his Hellblazer miniseries is going to be fantastic? And there's moments like this that show the reader and John Constantine fans that he does understand it. He gets it.
He gets it. And like, my favorite part was actually seeing, just like what you alluded to, finding out that he spent, it says here, he spent his days searching for the living among the undead, and spent his nights drinking with the ashes of his best friend.
Yeah, having a drink with a shoebox of remains and the ghosts of his past.
How messed up is
It's
that?
so perfectly characterized.
And Taylor's doing a really good job to the point that his version of Constantine is really awesome.
It is.
Because
I like it. Like I said, we haven't had enough, but the moments we're getting so far, I gotta say, good job, Taylor.
Because he takes the id of John and ramps it up to like 11, right? Like, we all know John's really self-defeating and hates himself, but fine, we're gonna make him, just like what you said, deal with survivor's guilt. We're gonna add on to that, and then we're gonna just ramp up his self-hatred for himself from 10, where it was already perfect, to 11.
Yeah.
And just take that extra step.
I think it's funny how Taylor shows how cognizant he is of his issues and
Of his
problems.
issues.
You know, the whole survivor's guild aspect and not wanting to be the last person alive. He's not the kind of guy to sacrifice himself. The fact that all of this is being stated and it's all internalized, it shows us just how aware he is as a person, which makes him that much more interesting, John Constantine. Because he's not there are a lot of people out there who do bad things, make stupid mistakes, and they're just oblivious because they're stupid. They're moronic, they're not in touch with their feelings or themselves. Whereas John, he completely understands himself. He understands what he does. He understands why he does it. And he understands why he feels the way he does. It's great.
It's great.
It's good. It makes a more complicated, interesting character.
Yeah. Although I will say, I am so worried what's going to happen to Zatanna at this point. Because, let's face it, Tom Taylor understands John.
Which means what? Zatanna's got to go bye-bye for
Zatanna's
him to be
gonna
more
die.
depressed? Oh,
Yeah,
come on.
because John, something's bad's going to happen because everyone around John died. So,
It's not. No, don't say
so
that. Zatanna's not gonna
Zatanna's
die.
right there. I'm like going, how is she going to go?
Come on, Dave. Calm down. She is going to get into a scissoring match with Wonder Woman.
I don't know. Well, that's how she dies. That's how she...
All right. So the cover art and the variants that accompany Taylor's work does not disappoint.
No.
As we had mentioned at the beginning of the show, there's 2 covers for this specific issue, and I believe as each subsequent issue is released, there will be 2 issues. There'll be the standard cover and the variant.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, because I'm a loser, I bought the standard version as well as the variant as well as a digital copy because I didn't want to touch with my greasy, grubby hands. So 3 versions. So thank you, Tom Taylor. Or I'm sorry, you're welcome, Tom
You're
Taylor.
welcome.
Yeah, so the variant cover is fantastic. When they first dropped the variant covers on us, I immediately pre-ordered it. I did not want to lose out because if you lost out on the early variants of the main DCeased title last year,
Oh, we've discussed about it.
you're looking at like $27.
Oh, more now though, dude.
Well, more now, but even if you were like 2 weeks late, 10 times the going
Oh yeah.
cover price. So I was not about to let this happen when it comes to a John Constantine cover. And what you get is a homage to Blade Runner.
Yes.
It is a beautiful cover. I am looking diligently currently online for a blown up poster of this cover because I will be putting this up on the wall in the studio. It's fantastic.
It's a really cool cover.
And then who did the art on that?
The one that did the art on that, let me see. If
Look
I can-
that up. And then the standard cover has Superman, Swamp Thing, Batman, Constantine, and Wonder Woman, the new Wonder Woman, all on the cover. So I had to buy that one as well. If it didn't have Constantine on it and Swamp Thing, I probably wouldn't have bothered. But hey, you put Swamp Thing and Constantine on there and you got yourself a buyer. The cover work or the cover art is amazing. The artwork within the pages as well is fantastic as expected. Taylor usually collaborates with some pretty talented artists, and that's no different with DCeased Dead Planet #1. Did you get the artist?
I'm trying to find it. I can't find it right now. There it is. Ben Oliver.
He did the variant cover for #1.
Yeah, Ben Oliver's movie variant. Which, dude, I was so excited when I got this because to get these variant covers is really tough. And if you don't get it from day one or even
Good luck.
Because as soon as I went to go get it, because I got lucky and went into the comic shop the day of DCeased Dead Planet 1 came out, there were only 3 copies left that I had. So I grabbed one for myself. And as soon as I
calling
grabbed,
me up,
well,
buddy.
Unfortunately, as soon as I grabbed one, the 2 remaining were gone. And one of my friends at the comic shop said he ordered 50 copies of that.
Jeez, come on.
And they all went in that morning.
Jesus.
That's how fast those variant covers go.
That's crazy.
And I can't wait for the next variant cover because people have been asking like what's the next one? What could be the
I already
number
pre-ordered
2?
them.
Yeah.
I had to.
You have to.
I didn't want to lose out this time. But Dave, I was reading some articles, and there are some naysayers out there. It just kind of makes me a little upset that, a lot of the blogs are talking trash about the DCeased variant, saying that, another oversized, overpriced miniseries by Tom Taylor. Here, buy your 15 covers. Okay, so you're disgruntled about that. Then don't buy it.
Don't buy it.
Like, no one's asking you to buy it. They're not forcing you to buy 15 covers. But the fans out there that are interested in getting those covers, listen, they wouldn't put out 15 covers if there wasn't a market for it.
Yeah.
It's a buyer's market. If there's no want, then they're not going to make it. So what are you complaining about? I read 7 different blogs this past week about the overpriced DCeased sequel and how we don't need it and how the covers are ridiculous. Why do we need a specialized variant for every single cover? And then they talked about the following week how the rates quadruple and how it's a racket. And I'm like, I don't think it's a racket. It's no different than the good old baseball card days, of the 90s and 80s.
Well, it's basically...
I don't like being taken advantage of, but I feel like if you're making a product that I want to buy, guess what? I'm not being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
If you're making a product and it's $15 and making it so exclusive that people can't afford it, then that's different. But if you're making, no one's telling you to buy 15 covers.
Exactly. And especially since everyone's saying that, look at all the multiple covers.
It's $4.99. It's $5.
Yeah, and it's when you compare it to everybody else, DCeased is not that bad. It's not as bad as people say.
Well, isn't Marvel X-Men like $8?
Yeah.
Like the new Marvel X-Men run, wasn't it like close to $8?
Yeah, it's about $8 a book. And that's not even talking about the variants.
But it's Marvel, Dave, and they get a pass on everything for some reason when it comes to the media.
And also, a lot of times when
people... look, a $25 cover. Oh, it's okay, it's Marvel. Ha, 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 ha.
And when people basically say that don't give this due, it goes into like what I was saying is why isn't Tom Taylor working on other books? Because everyone who reads comics religiously knows of Tom Taylor's works outside of like DC. He's done fantastic work on Injustice, as we said. He's done fantastic work in All New Wolverine back then. He did some Star Wars books. And people just basically shit all over DCeased because they just look at it and say, it's just a cash in for zombies. That's it. Without actually taking a look at the story within. And it goes with every single part of his works that he's done That's why I'm in what I made the statement at the beginning of the show that Tom Taylor deserves to actually take the reins of a major storyline just to prove all his naysayers and say, hey, I'm not just a one-trick pony. This is what you guys have been missing out on because you don't give my series enough credit.
I think there's a lot going on, and I don't want to get off subject too much, but I don't think Taylor's a bad writer. I think he's a good writer. He's just not, his writing is just not the type of thing that I normally go out and run and buy.
Yeah.
But he's not a bad writer.
He's not a bad
what
writer.
he does just fine. I mean, we broke down DCeased #1, and we talked about how smart it was and how it was a social statement about cell phones and communication. Is that what we talked about? I can't remember now.
Yeah, it was about social media.
Yeah, I have to go back because I don't remember. I have a horrible memory this past year because we're reading so much. But if I remember correctly, yeah, there was a social statement involved. So he is a bit introspective. He's a capable writer. And I feel like he's just getting better as the years go by. So I am looking forward to seeing what else he does, especially when it comes to John Constantine. I will buy every issue. We will be covering each subsequent issue as they come out. Well, no, not as they come out. We may have to wait and not cover them as they come out. It just depends on our schedule and if there are too many conflicts. But this does take us to the end of our show. Quickly, Dave, RMD score.
RMD score for DCeased #1, I give it a solid 89. It does a fantastic job setting the table. It makes me question what's going to happen next. We didn't really go into full details about what happens in the story. The John stuff is fantastic, but everything else also is really intriguing. The highlight in the book that is my #1 moment has to be the fact that for 5 years, Superman has been eating the sun. And that means that that just opens up the gambit in this universe. What the hell is Superman doing in the middle of the sun trying to siphon all the red energy into himself?
All right, Dave. So 89%?
89%.
Okay, I give this 87%. It's a solid first step into an ongoing saga of epic proportions. We didn't get into all the intricacies of the other characters just because this is the House of Mystery.
This is the House of Mystery.
But there is a good story going on. There are a lot of interesting aspects. We'll be back with another future discussion. Thank you, David.
Thank you.